Oh yeah, that woman right there should have replied.
That doesn't matter.
Over there in your.
It doesn't matter. Oh, she's been locked up.
First, we're going to see make sure we're certified quorum. So when you hear your name, please say I or present. Carlos Graves, present. De La Paz. Ruben, you see he's present. Please get your voice going. He's present.
Present.
Terry Flood. Christopher Harris.
I'm present.
Oh, Terry, okay, yeah, Terry, your name is on your camera in your account. So Terry Flood is present. Christopher Harris. Okay. Lee Peterman. Celesta Williams. Laura Protestanzo.
Present.
Derek Eugene. Marisa Johnson.
Present.
Lauren Kane.
Present.
Capital.
Present.
For Brianna Dean. What about Brianna?
I don't.
Boyson.
Right.
Yeah. So we won't start reminding you every minute. I'd like to start with hearing from Brianna.
Okay.
Yes. You want the microphone?
Hi, my name's Brianna Arredondo, and I'm a trans person, I'm an activist, I'm a filmer, I'm press as well. There's so much to say in a little amount of time, and like, where's accountability at when police officers commit crimes? And it's all connected, where police officers and DPS have been doing to students, they have been doing to community members, have they been doing what they've been doing to press, filmers like me and my friend right here. And not only that, but police officers been murdering brown Black people. They need to be held accountable. Y'all commissioners, you're commissioners, right? Are you holding the police officers accountable? That's the people in the community wants to see, they want to know, are you holding these police officers accountable, yes or no? That's what the community, us community members, the students wants to know. We demand, we're making a demand. This is a demand, not a recommendation, not suspension, not, for 1 or 2 days like lock-in, or 5 days. Where's accountability for lock-in as well? Like, accountability means in prison, in jail. These police officers need to be in jail for murdering brown and Black people, slamming down a brown trans woman on 6th Street. Ledger needs to be held for punching these minors on 6th Street. Ledger, lock-in Officer Garcia, Sean Ruggio for ramming into us with police SUV. Sean Ruggio with APD ran into me and my friend here. We were defending a camp because City of Austin also, it's all connected. What the police have been doing, they've been violating people's rights, unhoused people's rights, filmers' rights, press rights, students as well, and they're also collaborating with ICE. Say it for what it is. The police officers are denying it, oh, we're not working with ICE. They're absolutely working with ICE. Stop lying to the public, and also, there's also an LGBT Quality of Life Committee you know, and the police officers lied to them saying that, that the investigation was still ongoing, but they closed it when Officer Locken, like, resigned. Resignation is not accountability. Accountability is putting them in prison, in jail for, you know, these police officers, they're not your friends, no. We demand accountability. They act like they're your friends, they wanna be your friends, they're not your friends at all. No, whether they're gay officers, brown, black officers, they're a police officer first, that badge, what gives them that badge, they make them like, oh, they're executioner, they'll execute your life. What gives them the badge? They're not above the law, they need to be held accountable. And what they're doing is a violation of criminal law. Like, it's just, yeah, we demand, it's a demand. We the community, we demand these officers be held accountable. They're supposed to be held to a higher standard. They're not being held to a higher standard at all, because held to be a higher standard means that they need to be held accountable to be in jail for what they have been doing. It's connected. And stop working with ICE. Leave people alone. Leave people alone. You know. This is what this is the public right here. What we're saying. I don't know how many people is not speaking, but you know.
Your 3 minutes are up.
Yeah, sorry,
Thank you.
the chimes, I'm having issues with the chimes.
There's so much to say. I wanted to say in the amount, so amount of little time. Don't want to give you 3 minutes. So,
There it is, okay. Well, it'll be working from now.
Next, Rosatini.
Can you turn your mic on, please?
Is Rosatini present? No, okay, we'll move to the next, voice of Austin.
Hi, I'm Julian with the Challenger Street newspaper. I guess I'm the voice of Austin because I tell more real news than you probably actually care to hear about the police in Austin, since I've been doing police for 13 years now. So how many people, I need a show of hands, I need to select to not just have faces staring at me that are hired by, or not hired, but like volunteer, whatever it is, by the city council. I need to see a show of hands of who here supports Austin Police or police in
I should
general.
make you aware of, you have 3 minutes to speak, but we're not coming in back, so please just make your presentation.
Okay, I just wanted to know if y'all were pro-police. Just think about it in your head, if you would raise your hand or not to say that you're pro-police or pro-Austin police. Now, well, you know, are you guys, I can't ask you, but I'm gonna make you aware of the Stanford prison experience and Stanford prison effect. I can talk to you about the cop that I talked to for an hour yesterday, about an hour on the street in the sun, about all bad cops hate good, all good cops hate bad cops, and he's a good cop. Or Rudy is his name, if you wanna know. You can't support police if you don't support, if you support police abuse and blindly accept 2 years to get your rules together where there's no accountability at all for this committee, whatever. You're not supporting the police, you're supporting a cover-up. You're supporting the fact that the last commissioner meeting y'all had when Chief Davis and Gail McCamp told you that Ledger had been fired at least 4 or 5 times. They said Ledger terminated indefinite suspension, basically fired. He's still out there. We got plenty of video that we can show you if you guys want to see it. Pictures of him out there in the community in uniform, still working. So they lied to you. And if you can't hold the police accountable if you hold the police above the people. The people in a democracy are at the highest point. If you have some kind of sentiment that's biased towards the police, that's unconstitutional or anti the people of Austin, then you're doing a disservice. Instead, you should be listening to people like us. The person you just spoke to and myself have years and years of police experience. We have lists of police that we've publicly listed that are bad. We've made wanted posters for people who, police officers who are usually district reps, to go out there and sweeps and slash tents with a knife. That's not constitutional behavior, it's illegal behavior, it's a felony. Grab people out of their tents and their, including a black man right here, a friend of mine, got dragged, he got injured, and they took his stuff and left him. So it wasn't resisting arrest, it wasn't a proper use of force, it's not a proper entry, it's not a legal thing, and it happens all the time. So the disservice we do to police under the prison experiment is psychological. You're creating bullies and psychopaths out of people that you supposedly respect. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Next, we'd like to hear, Peter.
I was going to speak specifically on action item 8, so I think it might make more sense if I come up with the item to speak on that.
Remember that. Okay. And, before we move on, I want to give Ms. Rose Santini a chance if she arrived. No. So next we'll try to proceed to the approval of minutes. Number one, item 1 here is approval for the minutes of the regular meeting of February 27, 2026.
Motion to do that? Yeah, I'll second that.
I'm glad there's one little comment. This, we failed to pass this the February because there were only 6 people present, and at our next meeting, we could not make quorum to pass it. I'm not sure if we'll be able to do it again this time. But I'd like to, get all in favor of approving the February, agenda minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Or lift your hand when you have to count. Okay, looks like 7. So, do that. Thank you. We'll move on to, item number 2, which is the approval of the March 2026, any, motion?
I'll second that.
Second? Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll
Okay,
second that.
perfect. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Okay, looks like we have, your count. Again, please raise your hand again. 8. So that looks like it's approved. Thank you very much. I'd like to move on to item number 3 in the agenda. Staff briefing regarding progress and work on the police technology unit. Is there any updates on that?
There is no updates, Chair.
Okay, perfect. Any comments from the member committee? And we'll move to item number 4, which is a staff briefing regarding updates on the Austin Police oversight.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. I am Gail McCann, Director. Austin. We'll look over the overview and key highlights, FY 27 annual goals and key performance indicators for the city manager that is ongoing. Deputy Director Masters Crystal Kimbrough, who is our policy manager, and I met with Dr. Engel. Dr. Engel is the consultant brought by APD, brought in by APD to address use of force data collection and reporting. Dr. Engel provided for us a preview of a presentation that she provided to Mayor and Council on April 7th. So we also discussed the process and timing to ensure that APD's use of force data is once again available to APO. It had been paused as they brought the consultant in to start to look at that data. And so we will resume having the ability to look at that data and analyze and post our findings there on our site.
And more training will be scheduled for APO staff to ensure we have functionality and the ability to do what's needed for our analysis. APO continues to meet with our internal stakeholders to preview our Know Your Rights program that we plan to launch later this summer, as well as our officer involved shooting dashboard. We have one final preview with the city manager's office next week, and then at some point we'll bring that presentation to the commission for review as well, preview. Upcoming activities, May 4th, Kevin and I, Deputy Director Kevin and I will present to the Public Safety Commission on our mediation program and provide a summary of APO's responses to their September recommendations. We will also provide both of those briefings to you as well prior to that. On May 15th is your next CPRC meeting. Administrative and operational updates. Just want to remind everybody that the FY 25-26 Texas Cyber Security Awareness Training for Know Before, which has a deadline of May 31st for commissioners. Just a reminder that we need to get that done and then to reach out to Ryan if you need any additional assistance with that. Applications are being reviewed to fill our complaints division supervisor position. The deputy director is the lead in that recruitment process and is working to identify a permanent supervisor to start by mid-June. The policy and research division has also completed the interview process. They are trying to fill a policy analyst position and anticipate making a selection and offer of employment here in the next couple of weeks. APO requested IED downloads, 7 cases to be shared, the digital case files for the CPRC. One download was completed in 11 working days, and then 6 downloads were completed in 13 working days. The cases have been made available to CPRC's designated review groups. APO is moving forward with plans to recruit for alternates for the CPRC members to ensure that you're fully operational in the event that commissioners have to vacate for whatever reason. We currently have only one alternate available, so we want to make sure we are starting the recruitment process. We do have a timeline for recruitment and selection. That timeline is the application process open up today. So the application process will open up today. APO will be responsible for launching all the campaign ads, the social media, press release. We'll be doing all of that on next week. Here's the ask. The ask is we are recommending before or after your May 17th meeting that you have a reception either here before or after, and this would just be to host a reception for those community members who are interested in becoming a commissioner. So any interested community members would be welcome to attend the reception in person here at City Hall to meet any potential future, to meet you guys first and then fill those positions as they, if and when they become available. We can prepare like refreshments for community members and also allow for validation for parking. So just wanted, that's the ask. And if you are in agreement with that, we can start to coordinate that as well. May 17th before or after your meeting, you'll just need to tell us what time frame you'd like to do it.
You're saying that we would come before or after our meeting, so it would be on the same day?
It would be on the same
Oh, okay.
day. We would probably set something up right in the atrium. We're gonna do all for that, so that community members who are interested in these positions as alternates could come out and have an opportunity just to meet with you as their potential or future colleagues and have conversations about your roles prior to making a commitment themselves.
Great.
And I'm sorry, I let you keep talking and I forgot to ask questions. I have a couple questions on the mediation programs, okay?
We're gonna do a briefing on the mediation program right after this. So we will close the applications for alternates at 11:59 PM on May 22nd, so the applications the following Friday after your reception, if you're into that. After that process, the auditors have to, qualify applicants. We anticipate that will happen around June, and then June and July, we would do the selection for the alternates. And then August or so, we would, select the new commissioners and then do the training for the alternates. Commission support and follow-up. Again, the draft CPRC one-year report, we understand is still in progress with Commissioner Harris as the lead. There was a request for 2 case briefings based on public communications from, 2 complainants at your March meeting. We are not conducting either briefing at this meeting today. The reason is that one case is an active investigation, so we won't be doing a briefing on that. And the second case, although it's already been adjudicated, there's a pending criminal case related to that case, so we're not going to be doing those briefings here. Community engagement. So last month, the city of Austin launched a new website design. As a result, some of the links on the CPRC web are broken. And so we're working with the department related to that. The APO communication team is working with the city's web team to identify and fix any broken links. But if you are noticing any broken links, please let us know so we can make sure we are putting in a ticket and getting that addressed. To support CPRC community engagement efforts on Friday, April 3rd, the APO communication managers met with Commissioner Franco to discuss ideas for community engagement. Some of the recommendations that came out of that is just a long-term engagement plan. We talked about providing maybe business cards and name tags for commissioners as they are doing some of that community engagement, and also recommending a training. There's a training called the IAP2 training. We are strongly recommending this training. It's a widely recognized as an international standard for public sector community engagement strategies and planning. The city of Austin offers this training in-house if you are interested at a reduced cost, and we would be happy to help you coordinate that training, so the community engagement training. In terms of engagement,
Question?
How do we sign up for that training?
you can just let us know, and then Sarah, our community engagement person, will help you navigate that. Per Commissioner Pena's request, APO will connect with the Housing Authority of the City of Austin, HACA, Community Engagement Lead, to pursue some further collaborations, I understand. And then the regular community engagement events have been added to your calendars, to the CPRC resource calendar for commissioners to review and attend. Additional outreach opportunities will be added to the calendars as they are identified. Just some additional engagement, March 28th, the North Health and Wellness Fair we attended. On April 3rd, we met with the CPRC Vice Chair to discuss community engagements planning. 413, meeting with APD and CMO. 414, meeting with the Austin Police Association. 415, there was a pop-up resource clinic that we attended. 416 and 17, the Central African American Family Support Conference we've attended. 416, also the APD Academy. 422, we're meeting with the city manager's office. I think I mentioned that early. And then 422, the Trinity Center. Related to policy and research highlights, APO serves on the Austin Police Department Policy Review Committee as a non-voting member. Staff attended a committee meeting to discuss several policies under revision. The committee is still in review phase for those discussions. The Policy and Research Division will also launch the Austin Police Oversight officer-involved shooting dashboard in the coming weeks. We are looking to schedule a demo at an upcoming CPRC meeting, so that you and the public can learn more about the dashboard. In terms of the complaints division participated in the meeting, with the Trinity Center along with the community engagement team in March, and plans to host its first complaint division center community event in April at the Trinity Center. This event will focus more just on the complaint process. So we want community members to be able to ask questions and learn more about filing complaints and what the complaints process looks like. And then we have your updated items and priorities. I think Ron has mentioned there are some additional things you need to add, but Commissioner Reeves sponsored the CPRC Year 1 summary of accomplishments and challenges, a review and edits of the CPRC internal operating procedures, draft recommendations related to access and case files on the city code, draft recommendation for an online message board for the commission, bylaws discussion and amendments, present a draft rules and procedures for review by the full commission, discussion of the Public Safety Commission's recent recommendation to council regarding the Office of Police Oversight's compliance with the Office of Police Oversight Act, considerations of handling confidential versus public information, reward of APD's policy, review of APD's policy for officer-involved cases. Commissioner Eugene sponsored education on APD discipline and policy, rules and procedures on case review, confidential information rules and guidelines, and APD policy on OIS cases. Commissioner Flood sponsored recommendations for APD to develop a dashboard on ICE interactions, codify a process to interact with APD and community interests, APD interactions with ICE on a public dashboard proposal as an action item, a briefing on the 2 cases that we discussed earlier, and then charging CPRC review with preponderance of evidence to, rather than beyond a reasonable doubt. And Commissioner Pena sponsored a resolution to council for an open feedback whiteboard proposal as an action item. And I think there were additional, action items that you wanted to add, and we'll add them at this meeting. Thank you.
I have a parliamentarian question. Regarding the reception, I would like to see, I think it's a fantastic idea, and I have no problem with it at all. But maybe the only question is whether before, after, or both. There's some of us up here early and some of us up here after, and they can do that. But I'd like to know if anybody else has any particular objection to that. Yeah. Seems like my personal, I think people that are trying to decide to be in a committee will be well served if they can be told some of the effort involved in doing this, and whether it's how maybe incompatible with sometimes with the job and the amount of time it takes to review even one case, and we have hundreds of cases to do, so they can better understand the commitment of time that they're trying to. We've had a large turnover, partly because of this, so people are surprised to know how much work is involved. So I just want to give any commissioner any opportunity to voice it about it. That seems like a perfect thing. It's just that I don't want to wait till April, have to vote on it. We had for this stuff. We all thought it's a good idea. See, we're not letting it just say it's have that, and we would worry about who's before and who's after. And
yes, I think it's a good idea. I'm with you on that. I can be here before or after. I like after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just be here after, and someone was like, I'll make sure I'll be here before.
I also have to respond because we'll get people who could come after working hours.
Correct. That's it. Any other commissioners, any questions? Any questions?
That's on the agenda. But I have a question about the report. You referenced Dr. Ingalls, a consultant.
That's correct.
Would it be possible for her to, for us to request that she present to the commission?
We can ask,
Okay.
we can yes.
And then you mentioned the academy or meeting at the academy.
Right, so our complaints staff, goes to the academy just to talk about for the cadets, so they are aware of who we are and what we do, so they get some insight in terms of the Office of Police Oversight, what our complaints process looks like. We talk to them about community engagement and policy as well. So we have a time frame in which, we are there. We're providing a presentation to them prior to their graduation from the academy.
There's an academy class right now,
Yes.
and when is their estimated graduation date?
You know? I don't know. I can contact them.
That's all.
Anyone online questions? Or move on to the next? Anyone online, any questions before we move on to the next?
I wanted to say something real fast. The year in review, I will say I've been very behind. That is no fault of myself, and I do apologize. I think if anything, I just need to give an outline of just the cases we reviewed and the recommendations we've made, so I can include that, make sure that's covered. Maybe synchronize a draft, take a look at it, and then more from there.
I do want to comment about our online participants. If you're participating online, you have to have your mic and your camera on, or you won't be considered present.
Commissioner Eugene is reacting to, Sylvester Williams, just joining, but she's only on their, but not present, so we may have to count her as present when we're.
Yeah, Commissioner, I'm working with her online, we're just doing a little bit of troubleshooting, but as soon as she turns on her camera, I'll count over the time.
Thank you.
I'm trying to turn it on right now, trying to figure out it's not working, so I'm keeping there.
Where does the information that you give us, that I don't believe that we're intentionally being misled or misinformed, but where does that information come from, like on the statuses of the officers? Does that come directly from the police department and given to you, or is there a secondary verification process?
I'm not sure I'm understanding your question. The status of the officers?
Yes, it was, an accusation, pointed towards you, during one of the public speeches today, and they said that you and the police chief lied to the commission regarding an officer that was supposed to be terminated, but they're still on active duty, and I know you to be a person of integrity, so I just wanted to understand where that information came from that you relayed to us, because I don't think that we have intentionally been misled, but I just want to have clarification for the record.
Sir, I believe the speaker is speaking, regarding the case discussion we had in not the last commission meeting, but the one before that. And, the discussion was regarding, Garcia, Officer Garcia, who had been, indefinitely suspended. Not Ledger.
Okay, and so when they're indefinitely suspended, there's no chance that they're going to return to the force, right? That's basically termination.
The officer is terminated, sir.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to provide clarification because if not, that type of sentiment could spread, and I want to keep our trustworthiness level as high as possible. Thank you.
No.
Okay, if that's all for the item 4, I'd like to move on to item number 5, staff training and Austin Police Oversight Mediation Program.
Is there a PowerPoint? I think we got a PowerPoint. Mediation.
Who's the lead on that?
Hey, good afternoon, Commissioner Kevin Masters, Deputy Director, Austin Police Oversight. I'm going to give you an overview of the Austin Police Oversight Mediation Program. Basically, the presentation will consist of discussion about the oversight program, the authority, about mediation, the process, and what we believe the benefits to be to both the police department as well as members of the community. I will say the program came about based on a discussion that was initiated by the former commander of the Internal Affairs Division, Commander Jeremy Compton. He reached out to me one day as he was looking through, I believe, their policies, and basically the conversation was saying, Kevin, we got this policy that says we should really have a mediation program. We've been trying for 20 years to stand up a mediation program. And he asked me if I would work with him in an effort to do that. So this is an outcome of that proactive contact from Commander Compton to stand up a mediation program that we can actually implement within Austin Police Oversight in conjunction with APD and the Dispute Resolution Center, who is our consultant who will be working with us in the program. As you know, the mission of Austin Police Oversight is for us to provide impartial oversight of the Austin Police Department's conduct, practices, and policies to enhance accountability, improve transparency, and sustain partnerships with our community. Our pillars in which we stand under is accountability, transparency, and partnerships. There's some specific things that we do and some things that we don't that we think it's always important to articulate. We are a separate independent civilian oversight body. We do not work for the police department. We do not report to the chief of police. We report to the city manager's office, and we are separate from the police department. We review all community complaints, as well as we have full access to APD systems, their body-worn cameras, their reports, their database. We make recommendations to the chief of police and city managers related to discipline and administrative policies as well as training. These are independent recommendations that are created in-house, so we don't have to reach out and ask the chief or anybody for permission to say something. We base our recommendations on our independent efforts based on our discoveries and our reviews. We also in charge with educating community members about the complaint process, outlining reports, as well as recommendations, and we do public education with respect to interaction with law enforcement. What we do not do, once again, we don't report to APD or the chief of police. We don't oversee the law enforcement, other law enforcement agencies. So if people have a complaint against Travis County Sheriff, Round Rock Police, or someone else, we have no authority to be involved in those types of complaints. We do not engage in any criminal investigations. Our authority is within the administrative realm, so we look at issues of policy violations on the complaint side. We also do not administer discipline by state statute. Only the chief of police can issue discipline or final discipline for a police officer. They're not the final decision of the authority. The mediation program, basically the meet and confer agreement is one of the documents that authorize us the ability to do that. The mediation authorizes established in the 2024 meet and confer agreement between the city of Austin and Austin Police Oversight. It's Article 17, Section 16, which says the city shall implement a voluntary mediation process. That was one of the reasons the program. Another authority was through the APD's policies, which is APD policy 9026.5, investigation, handling, and mediation. Policy states mediation shall be an option to discuss by Austin Police Oversight intake staff after the external complaint affidavit has been submitted to the complainant. So the other authorization for the mediation program is established within the policies of APD. APO also has a policy that outlines mediation and our mediation process and process handling. We view mediation as kind of a community structured voluntary process that resolve conflicts between community members and police officers through dialogue rather than discipline of force. is mediation? We view mediation as a voluntary confidential process in which you use for mediators to facilitate dialogue between a community member and police officers, improve understanding and build trust outside of the disciplinary process.
Why does this process have to be confidential?
Well, we think in order for it to be, in order for citizens, that's the confidentiality part. We want to make sure that citizens feel comfortable as they make complaints and as they go through a process to maybe reach a solution to whatever their complaint is as they interface face to face with officers. That's best practice as it relates to mediation implementations and usually confidential processes. In addition to that, is what's called PII or private information. It's information that shouldn't be disclosed publicly. So we work as best we can by not only city policy but also law to make sure certain information is confidential.
The officer should not be entitled to any confidentiality.
When we focus on confidentiality, the officers should have some level of confidentiality as it relates to some personal information that may be an investigative file that involves them. We get all kinds of complaints. Some of it involves information that's personal to them. Much of the confidentiality information that's retained and confidential is the complainants. We want to make sure complainants' information is confidential as well. So if we have a policy that says, hey, we're going to put everything out there and no information is going to be confidential, my guess is we won't have many community members who say, I want to be part of the mediation process.
Can I ask a question since a follow-up question? This is question for understanding. The way I read this, I imagine the way it worked out was, I am a citizen and I feel the police have done something to me. My options right now is to file to APO and send them a file and complain to APO, which is what we've been trying to do, so investigation starts. In lieu of that, there's an alternative which you say, well, would you accept a mediation between you and the officer where I'm asking, I'm not saying, I'm imagining that I decide, okay, well, I will sit in front of the officer with a mediator and confront them there and tell them what happened, and after has a chance to explain it and the chance, and with the hope that we will walk away from that thinking, okay, we have an understanding and avoid investigation. Am I interpreting this?
Yeah, I would advocate if you let me get through it, some of the questions may be answered as we get through the rest of the.
Yeah, the reason I was thinking, then in that case, of course I want complaint services for both the officers because we're trying to talk together and try to solve this out before we go to the investigation. So that's why I was correct.
Yeah, if you guys let me get through it, it's a pretty short presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions as best I can, and may answer some of your other questions. Okay. Mediation authorization through a memorandum of understanding. We have basically entered into back in November 2025, we entered into an agreement with the DRC, Austin Police Department, Austin oversight for DRC to be the consultant that conducts our mediation. And the purpose of the MOU is to establish a collaborative framework among DRC, APD, and APO to provide mediation service for interaction between members of the public and APD officers in which public has submitted a complaint regarding alleged police misconduct. The goal of the mediation is to provide a safe, confidential, and voluntary space for the conflict of police and the officers to be communicated openly to work for mutually acceptable solutions facilitated by professional third parties. In terms of our purposes, it's really to establish a collaborative framework between agencies, entering into the interactions and the agreements. It's to be able to provide a safe, confidential, and voluntary space where people can talk about issues like discord. They can talk openly about their interactions and their actions. To cultivate a more trusting relationship between community members and police officers. To encourage dialogue between community members and police officers so they may educate each other on various norms, customs, and behaviors of the two different groups. It's also, once again, an effort to be in compliance with APA contract, APD general orders, as well as APD operating. So with respect to the process, mediation will be offered for formal complaints. And that's because if someone asks for a community concern, that's them saying, I don't want any further contact, I just want the police department to be aware of my complaint. The supervisor referral, there's a built-in interaction with the police department because in a supervisor referral, the supervisor of the officer is required to contact the citizen and they have a dialogue. So the purpose of the mediation, if there are other formal complaints, and they request a formal investigation, and we identify that it's eligible for mediation, that's another avenue instead of a formal investigation. The goal is for APA and APD to identify suitable mediation cases based on public complaints against APD officers. Approval has to be received from the chain of command and willingness of the officer to participate before we offer mediation to the complainant. We will refer the involved officer as well as the complainant and the chain of command to the DRC so that they can start the voluntary participation in the mediation process. The Dispute Resolution Center will have staff who will contact the officer as well as the complainant and complete their various intake documents, which are confidential alibi agreements that talk to them about the process, as well as other commitments that both parties have to make prior to the mediation. Mediations will be conducted virtually, and that's part of the process. APD has a policy by which when an officer is on duty, he or she obviously has to carry a firearm, whether they're in a formal uniform or if they're in plain clothes. Anytime they're on duty doing police actions, they're required to have a firearm. DRC has a policy that they don't allow firearms into their building. They stood up a mediation virtual process during COVID, and actually they said that they were very comfortable and they do a lot of their mediations virtually. So this particular mediation process was designed to be conducted virtually. Officers will always have access to the technology and what's needed. If a complainant does not have access to, let's say, a computer for virtual purposes, DRC will provide that, and our APA will be able to provide. They can come to our offices to be engaged in the mediation process. At the conclusion of the mediation, the DRC will provide APO with a written response that states both parties appeared, whether they believe it was a successful mediation or not. Failure for the officer to attend the mediation will automatically default to a formal investigation. If the complainant fails to participate in the mediation process, the case will be closed and no other actions will occur. Some of the core goals we would like to achieve and we believe we can achieve is improved communication and understanding, that we can resolve complaints more collaboratively and strengthen community and police relations. We think the mediation will help parties understand the other's perspective and experience because of a face-to-face dialogue, and hope it will reduce misunderstandings that occur and often escalate conflicts. It allows community members and officers to address concerns directly and focus on mutually acceptable agreements and not necessarily punishment. And we also think it will build trust by showing that officers are willing to listen and engage, and it will help humanize both sides to reduce long-term tensions. Additional core goals is to provide a safe and confidential neutral environment, and to reduce repeat conflicts and resource strain, as well as promote healing and accountability. Encourages honesty and investigations. The sessions will be private and facilitated by a trained mediator, as previously stated. We also think it will help the department focus complaint investigators as well as some of our staff on more serious natures, more serious matters if both agree to get engaged in mediation. It will also reduce the turnaround time in which investigations occur. We know formal complaints can sometimes take 6-7 months and maybe even up to a year, whereas mediations are designed to be scheduled within 30 to 45 days and hope that the mediation process would be concluded within a month to 2 months. It gives community members a voice in the process and encourages officers to reflect on interactions without adversarial tone. We believe some of the benefits to police officers will be constructive feedback. It will reduce conflict and stress, clarify intentions, timely resolution to low-level complaints. All of the mediations will be based on low-level complaints, issues of discourtesy, maybe an error on a report that an officer made, a miscommunication that resulted in the report. We also think it will improve communication skills for officers because they'll be more engaged on face-to-face basis. We do calls every day, but sometimes when you go into calls, you focus on the discourse that generally happens in a call for service or a self-initiated activity. Being engaged in the mediation process is a completely different environment when you're actually having a dialogue with someone. It just kind of slows down the process. The benefits to the community members will be they'll have a voice and validations. They can directly express how an incident impacted them, which is not often possible through a traditional complaint process. We think there'll be more time, earlier, transparency and understanding. Community members gain insight into policies and procedures and situational constraints they may not otherwise be aware of. It gives an opportunity for the officer to talk about, I did this because policy says this, etc. Also, healing and closure, even when harm can't be undone, acknowledgement and apology when appropriate often matters most moving forward this process. Also provides everyone a safe space because mediation is voluntary and facilitated by a neutral third party. Community. That completes my overview, and I am happy to ask any questions.
Is there a cost to the citizens to engage in this mediation?
No, our office are funded so that there's no cost to APD and there's no cost to community members to participate. The average mediation will be up to 2 to 4 hours is what we're projecting.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I really appreciate it. I think this is a great idea. I have a few questions about it though. How are the mediators chosen?
The mediators are mediators who are currently on staff with DRC, the Dispute Resolution Center. They're all trained and certified mediators. The mediators have to comply with state statute in terms of training, certification, and other qualifications. We have entered an agreement with the DRC, and we rely on them to make sure the trained mediators are provided in this process.
Perfect. And is there any mechanism set up that if, they do the mediation and they don't feel like it was fair, is there any sort of appeal or what's the next process for that?
When you say they, who are you referring to?
The complainant.
The way it's set up is that the Dispute Resolution Center will provide us kind of an after-action report that talks about not necessarily all the details, but whether they believe it's a successful mediation or not. We have not discussed what happens if everybody's unhappy, and I anticipate there are going to be times when a mediation is done and somebody's not going to be unhappy. We have not discussed if there's any additional actions that can occur. What we don't want to happen is we don't want to have mediations and one side, let's say a complaint would not be satisfied with the mediation. We want them to understand that is the process. Once the mediation is completed, we won't have another formal investigation because there's no additional outcomes, no additional information. So, they'll all be low-level complaints.
Again, thank you for the program overview. Has this been tried in other law enforcement agencies, or are you aware of having any data in those other law enforcement agencies?
If you know other law enforcement agencies have mediation programs, I'm not aware of anything.
If an officer has been found in the mediation to have violated policy, what happens at the end of that mediation? Is that officer referred for disciplinary action, or is that either?
That's to be determined. It depends on the level of the allegation. We start out as low-level violations, and if the officer acknowledges that he or she violated a crime and it's in doing the mediation process, as an example, okay, I made a mistake on this report that obviously puts you at a disadvantage. I acknowledge that I made a mistake and it is against policy to make a mistake, and the officer apologizes and says that he or she recognizes the mistake was made, then it's a closed deal. We're not going to have officers acknowledge policy violations on low-level complaints only to receive discipline following their acknowledgement. So the goal is to come to a successful conclusion, hopefully, so that the complainant can hear their complaint, they have a face-to-face conversation with the officer, and come to some understanding of something. The goal is not to add additional formal punitive discipline to officers after the mediation process.
Can you give me some examples of what you consider low-level violations?
This-
You know, I hear from people who have been assaulted by officers, so on. Would this form be appropriate for something like that?
Yeah, use of force is never, in our office, use of force is never a low-level violation. Low-level violations will fall under discourtesy. I said a cuss word that may have offended you. Report writing. I put misinformation on the report. Maybe I heard you wrong and I didn't fill the report out correctly. 99% of the allegations will be forms of discourtesy, forms of some form of report writing, or minor procedural things. Let's say you're on 6th Street, you're illegally parked. I towed your car because I didn't see the sign that allowed you to park there. Yeah, there's discourse, yeah, you're harmed, but in some respects that may be a low level complaint if it's truly a mistake that was made by the officer. The use of force, bias-based policing, those types of things will never be a low level complaint.
Yeah, one comment for me is I think it goes along second to is that it would be helpful if a violation that you plan to use for these were listed clearly. I have questions on something like bias and disrespectful, racial, some of those, and my view may rise to a thing more than this, I'm sorry, I apologize, and I don't want this humiliation. And so I think that's where we're having some difficulty understanding what's the level of, where do you draw a line on what specific violations of GEO are eligible? What are eligible for mediation?
Yeah, we will conduct our preliminary review. There'll all be formal complaints, so there'll be complaints that a complaint specialist has looked at, a complaint investigator has looked at. We've written a memo to go down to internal affairs, if it's use of force, if it's bias-based policing, if it's inaccurate reports that we perceive that's based on malice. Those aren't low level. I will tell you, I cannot itemize what a not low level offense is going to be, because there'll be something I leave off the list, and all of a sudden I've documented these other low level violations. We won't be able to itemize them.
Yeah. But at least an example for typical, because clearly one of the things I noticed is as we go through the review, there are some codes that show up more often than others. And so you figure out if you want to make this practical, you look for those codes that show up often that do fall into this level of lore, and make sure you clearly itemize it. It's two of those that we know that then we know you benefit financially by avoiding litigation on these, and you're targeting the right level of thing. Another last question I have is once again, I'm testing time. Normally, when I've seen mediation used and people agree to mediation, it's basically you agree to mediation, you agree to live by the resolution or the conclusion of the mediator. And it's almost like a promise that we're not going to escalate after this. Whatever he decides, we have to live with that and done. This seems similar. And so I think there's a certain burden to make sure that the complainant, knows, you know, that, what they're getting into. So am I interpreting this correctly?
Yes, GRC they've been around for many, many years. Like I said, they are all licensed and trained mediators that are in compliance with state requirements for mediators, so.
But if they go into company going knowing, well, whatever I rule, I'm gonna have to live with that. So that's the compromise I had.
And I guess my question would be, obviously, if they, let's say, get to mediation and the complainant is not satisfied, they can't necessarily divulge what happened in it, but they can go to other options if they feel mediation is failed, I guess, right?
Not within our office. Mediation is part of the process. It's the first thing to mediate.
And then, so I'm trying to understand, if it's a low-level case, then it's not necessarily something that the officer would be punished for, maybe just like an apology and things like that, is that correct? And if so, is there going to be any mechanism to keep track of where individual officers are having to use mediation over again, and at which point would that turn into something being miscalculated?
Yes, we have desires to track all mediations, and that falls under a different umbrella because we will see the mediation, and what would happen is we have a matrix that talks about, okay, this is your first episode of this is the recommendation. If you have this many episodes of this, it escalates. So we would keep track of them in our office, and naturally, if I see, okay, Kevin Masters has had 2 prior mediations for a similar, or even just 2 prior mediations, that my red flag goes up. So those are, at that point, it would probably not be eligible, or we would recommend an officer to participate in multiple mediations, even if the violations weren't of similar nature. At that point, it's a pattern. There's pattern behavior.
So the result could be that the recommendation of is that the officer goes and takes training, and, HR training or something like that. Is that correct? I mean, that could be because sometimes that's actually the outcome of even when it's full investigation, sometimes the outcome is you need training. And if the mediator would have the authority to make that recommendation, I think you need to take some special training.
I'm not gonna say what they're gonna do, but I can see a scenario where that's part of the mediation, where the complainant and the officer agree, I'll do this, so I can see that as a reasonable outcome in some cases.
And then my last question is, are these meetings going to be recorded? What happens if eventually, someone wants to take this to civil court? Do they subpoena that mediator, or is there body cam footage of this mediation?
There will not be body worn camera of the BWC of the mediation. I think we talked about it, but I don't recall the specific process the DRC will use as it relates to recording. I can't answer that, but I'll give you an answer. But I will tell you there will be no BWC because it's a process that's going to be separate from the police as well as separate from APO. It's whatever DRC's policies are as it relates to recording mediations. If they have a policy, we don't record mediations, then we're not. Is the president?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
And I'm just going to give you a perspective of a community member. It almost feels like a chance for rehabilitation for the officer without any consequences being recorded, and also a chance for the community to engage with the officer. But if it's not being recorded, if it's just the mediator and the citizen, and the outcomes and the metrics aren't public, I think that creates transparency concerns. And then the other part of that is, when is it appropriate for a citizen to have representation in the mediation, and will the officer be afforded representation in the mediation? Those are my questions first, and then upon those answers, I think I have a couple follow-up.
Yeah, it's my understanding representation will not be invited to the mediation. And in terms of tracking, we will track the outcomes of the mediations, whether they were successful mediations or not, as well as any agreements that are made within mediation. To Commissioner Reeves' example, if both parties agree that, yeah, the officer needs some training, that will still be tracked because that will become part of his or her actual internal affairs record, because it's an outcome of an investigation.
I would find it hard to believe that an officer would say, yeah, I do need some retraining.
Oh, I've seen it happen 100 times. I mean,
Yeah, but I'm just saying, it's really hard for, again, I'm just coming from the perspective of the citizen, to believe that, oh yeah, officer just gonna say, yeah, I messed up on 6th Street that night, go ahead and retrain me. Like, that's just, it doesn't seem like that would be plausible, but I get it, because you've been on it, but that's just the perception of an outsider, that if they were already gonna hold themselves accountable, then they'd be reporting themselves. That doesn't happen. And so what can we do to ensure the community that this process is fair and not like a opportunity to whitewash the record? And especially if it's hard because if we can't codify what offenses fall into what category, or what is high and low level, you just know it when you see it. It's really hard to be able to really justify how that determination got made. And so I'm looking at structure and how long has this, well, my question is, has this program already started, or is it something that you're planning to start? And then I think you mentioned you were working with Officer Compton, is that correct?
We signed the agreement with the Dispute Resolution Center in November of 2025. It's a program that we can offer as of November 2025. And we currently work with the Internal Affairs Division. That commander is no longer there. That commander was the kind of the resource that started the conversation.
Yeah, I thought we met him when we did our little tour of the academy. But yeah, so it's almost 6 months old. Is there any metrics right now that you could, are there any metrics right now that you could share with us about how the process has been going?
No, we have not had any mediation referrals.
Okay, and do you think that's just because people don't know about it? Or are people afraid of it, or?
I would say it's because we haven't identified a case that we would like to be mediated.
Okay. So, no cases fall within that, but again, what is that threshold? That's what I'm saying. How do we get beyond we know when we see it? How does the public know if their case is eligible to be mediated?
Well, they will know because we will make notification to them that this case is eligible for mediation. The officer has changed name and the officer has agreed to the mediation. So it's an offer that's based on an observation. I can't say that every discourteous case is going to be eligible for mediation.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. This, without having a rubric, if you will, it's really hard to not say that this is subjective, right? It's not objective because it depends on who's making that decision to refer to mediation or not. And thus far, you haven't seen any cases. But if there's no consistent threshold, there's no consistent, gates. And I know if you've seen one case, you've seen one case. But if there's almost like a template or a way that people can know that, okay, I don't have to go through the long, arduous process of reporting my case and then doing all the other processes. I can get mediation, but if there's no codified metric to say what meets that and it can't be clearly articulated, then it's subjective and it's going to give the community the perspective that people are trying to cover for officers if I were a citizen. And I know the intent is not that, but perception is reality. That's what I'm saying.
Commissioner, it is a subjective process. It's subjected to the circumstances of the allegation. So if we try to make this, or try to make it appear that it's not a subjective process, that's disingenuous. This is a very subjective process because it's based on a specific incident, a specific action in every incident that's completely different based on the circumstance.
Absolutely, but that's what I'm saying, and I think that's what we're in agreement with, that we should take some subjectivity out of it because people already feel like your position on this board, just because of your history as being a police officer, makes you prejudicial to preferential treatment to the officer. I know that you are an upstanding citizen and you want to do right by everyone, but again, that appearance and that perception can play into how people choose to interact. And if we could build in some guardrails to make people more comfortable with the process, with more codified mechanisms, and I'm sure that's something that would have to be thought through and worked through, and I'm not saying it's gonna happen today, but I'm just trying to give you a citizen's perspective of it and what we could do to make it better so that we can make it an effective program, because ultimately I think it is a really good idea. I think it could have tremendous benefit, but I'm also looking at the barriers to why it may not be adopted by the community. But thank you for answering my questions honestly.
And may I add, Commissioner Clark, thank you for that comment and that feedback, and that's definitely something we can look into. But let me just remind the commissioners that this is a voluntary process. And so if we identify a case that we believe is eligible for mediation, and we get the officer to agree, and we go back to the complainant and say, look, we know that the officer was rude, he has agreed to go, he or she has agreed to go to mediation, and the complainant said, nope, not interested. I think this should move forward with an investigation. Then they have that option. When we go to the complainant makes a determination whether or not they want to go through this process. And if they say, I know you identified that as a low-level complaint, I do not, and it's not a process that I want to go through, they have that option.
Yes, understood. Thank you. I think everybody in the process, the officer to the complainant, have the option of accepting mediation. And that's good, but like I said, I was just looking at the equity and perception of it just because the metrics for it aren't quantified. But thank you both for answering the committee's questions.
I have something to say if I may. I actually, I do a lot of breakfast activities. In New Jersey, I did a mediation program. And there was no consequences for the person or the agency I was complaining against. So it's actually kind of a breath of fresh air that if you do identify something as eligible for mediation, and the person wants to go forward, the complainant wants to go forward with mediation, that there are some consequences for the officer if they don't release act in good faith, it would appear. I think it's a great idea as long as the people that go into it understand that, you know, the mediation, it would appear is a bit binding on, you know, that it's confidential and that whatever the mediator decides is, that's it, you know.
One comment I guess I have on the financial side is, this is being sold or being presented as an opportunity for savings, because if it avoids the cost of an investigation, then you know there's some advantage there for everybody. But do we have any numbers talking about metrics on the cost of average cost of some of these investigations, APOs, and we will not know, you know, the average cost of an investigation. And the other comment I want to make to Commissioner Flux is that you know, with this is anecdotal data because with all of us are going to review a handful of cases, but I remember seeing a case where all the complainant wanted was an apology. And I kept thinking, well, this looks like would be an opportunity for me to get together and figure out something there. And I'm not sure the officer would agree, but it seemed that there's some things where even the complainant puts into perspective how offended he is and what he would want apology. And I thought maybe that those are possible cases for mediation.
Yeah, before we stood up the program, we actually had a case or two where the officer had asked for mediation, so, and we hadn't stood it up, so we couldn't go through with it. Can you put the presentation back up for just a second? Make sure I get through all my slides. Oh, that's the final slide. I just want to remind the commission that the next oversight implementation working meeting is Saturday, June 6, 2026 from 10 to 12. It's going to be at the Conley Guerrero Senior Activity Center, 808 Nile Street in Austin. We welcome you all to come out and join us and invite family and friends.
Can I ask one more question, regarding the mediation? If the officer assessed the mediation and the mediator suggested, X activity for, the officer to complete and gives them like a timeline to do it, does the officer's chain of command have to agree and sign off on that, or is it the mediator's decision final in that?
If there's a mediation outcome that the officer has agreed to, then he or she will be held accountable to comply with whatever the agreement is.
Okay, and what does that look like?
It looks like EBD. Whenever an officer receives formal discipline and they get what's called EBD, educational-based training, they give them a timeline in which to do it, and it's tracked. And if it's not completed within that timeline, then discipline is administered.
Okay, so if that happens, if the officer agrees to something, doesn't complete it, then that is tracked by you all, and you all will report to internal affairs?
I would say yes. We will be tracking outcomes and agreements, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And do you know how much the contract with DRC is? Is it on a retainer or is it per individual case?
We have a 2-year agreement with them with a maximum of 6,000, but we are charged based on individual mediations.
Okay.
So we have it up to for the first 2 years.
Is there a written guideline for what you consider eligible for mediation and not eligible for mediation?
That's kind of the discussion we've been having. What we have said are low-level complaints, and I will go through a process to try to identify as best I can with an asterisk, not fully encompassing, but I'll outline in a separate document, 1 page, these are types of complaints that may be eligible for mediation.
I'd be very interested to see that, please.
We'll get it together and I'll have it for your next meeting.
Thank you.
Any more questions, Commissioners? Okay, well, thank you very much. That was insightful. A lot of us were curious about what this was about. I'm moving on to item number 6 in the agenda. Staff briefing the Public Safety Commission September 2025 recommendations, including review of written responses to recommendation 2025-0908-206.
Again, thank you, Commissioners. Gail McCann, Director, Austin Police Oversight. I'd like to take an opportunity to provide an update on recommendation 006 from the Public Safety Commission. This evening, I'd like to offer an overview of the actions APO has taken in response to the recommendation, along with current status of our reporting, compliance, and transparency efforts. So on September 8th, the Public Safety Commission approved a recommendation to council and the city requiring 4 key actions from APO. The recommendation also called for APO to provide written responses addressing compliance status, implementation timelines and operation considerations. So I'll walk through each of those items this evening. Wanted to provide for CPRC a summary of our responses. The scope of the recommendation was related to annual reporting, compliance, public data accessibility, complaints process and outcomes, CPRC, and there was some miscellaneous items as well at the end of that recommendation, which I'll also update you on. Just for background, this recommendation follows an earlier commission discussion with APO in July of 2025 regarding APO's reporting and transparency obligations. Given the complexity of the issues raised at that meeting, I, as the director, determined that responding in writing would best support the Public Safety Commission's deliberative process and also allow engagement from a more informed position during future discussions. I also wanted to ensure precision in our responses and allow APO the opportunity to provide complete information, thoughtful information, but however the commission subsequently advanced its questions through a formal recommendation to the city manager and council. The ordinance, this is regarding the annual report. The Public Safety Commission made a request to present the most recent annual report of the annual report publicly posted at a publicly posted council meeting. And so AP's response to that is the 2024 annual report was presented to Mayor and Council via memo on October 13th, 2025. In 2020, our website and publicly on the following day on October 14, 2024, and then we presented the report to Mayor and Council on December 9, 2025. The ordinance requires that APO at least once per year provide both a written and oral report at an open city council meeting. At the time the recommendation was advanced to Mayor and Council on September 8th, we had not published the 2024 annual report at that time. So we'll talk about the annual report timeline kind of later in the presentation. There was also a request from a recommendation rather from the Public Safety Commission to publish a compliance plan related to our compliance with the Austin Police Oversight Act. APO operates in compliance with the Austin Police Oversight Act, which serves as our governing framework for what we do. APO does not maintain a separate standalone compliance plan. Compliance is embedded in our policies and our procedures and our reporting practices to ensure that we are staying aligned with the Oversight Act. We are open to identifying opportunities to further document and clarify our compliance approach where we find value in that. Complaint database. The Public Safety Commission recommended that we create a searchable public compliance database. Complaint documents are already searchable on our website. We understood that there were some challenges with the interface of our website, but we were also aware that the city was going to launch a new website. So at the time of this recommendation, at the time the Public Safety Commission advanced this recommendation, APO's website was already searchable and publicly accessible. That said, we were aware of community concerns regarding limitations in search functionality, and there were occasional mistranslation of posted content. As I noted, the city was in the process of rebuilding its website on a new platform designed to improve some of these issues that we were hearing out in the community. So on March 19th, the city launched a new site it has a cleaner page structure, a more intuitive navigation. It has enhanced search functionality, and then it's just an overall significant improvement for the user. So the user is having a much better user experience. And so at the time this recommendation was advanced, we were aware that complainants were having some of these issues on our website, but not on just our website, but on department websites across the city. So since the new website launch, we are anticipating that we will not have some of the search functionality issues that we were having in the past. The Public Safety Commission also recommended that the council assign a city clerk staff as your liaison. This recommendation was noted to help alleviate the strain on the Austin Police Oversight staff resources and to provide consistency and expertise regarding open meetings. So APO had not articulated any restraint on our resources. We have not experienced any restraint in supporting the Community Police Review Commission, and we continue to do so consistently. The office has the necessary legal support to address questions related to the Texas Open Meeting Act and any other city process. While we are not aware of any capacity issues or challenges, in the event that that was to occur, we don't anticipate that, but we would coordinate with the city manager's office and the clerk's office to mitigate any impact should those issues arise. But we are not having any issues in terms of needing that support or having resource issues related to the CPRC.
I guess I'd like to stop here and make a comment, just to be sure an opportunity for some of the commissioners who at the time they're present. It's clear that the Safety Commission, viewing the difficulties in which a CPRC was having, is having in ramping up and getting things done, they have attributed, or rightfully so, attributed that to lack of support or staff. There's age issues, something. There are members of the community that maybe were present then. I'm not sure if anybody wants to comment on this, but basically this is basically saying, and the staff and whatever staff support you're given CPRC is not sufficient. Maybe they need their own direct support from the city. My impression is that there may be more than one person in the committee. That they believe that that might be one of the explanations of the difficulty. And since we have not put a year-end report, and we have not put in summarize some of our criticism, that is that's a fair. I think that's a fair assessment of possibility. Any comments from any other commissioner?
Yeah, I'll comment and say that I think that is going to come down to how you, who you ask as far as how to interpret City Code 215.4. I guess I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Please continue.
Annual report timeline. This was a question related to the annual report schedule and who has edit and review authority over the annual report. So our annual report is based on all complaints filed within the calendar year. And we want to ensure that we are providing complete and accurate data when we are putting out our report. APD's Internal Affairs Division has 180 days to complete an investigation. So what this means is that complaints that are filed really late in the calendar year, notably in December, may not finalize until June of the following year. So once Internal Affairs completes its investigation, our complaint team starts to compile and validate all the data. That information is then provided to our, we have an end report, a project project lead, as we worked through drafting our annual report, they began drafting the report, which is subsequently reviewed and finalized in coordination with the Austin Communication and Engagement Department, as well as the city manager's office. So from about July through the publication, we have a structured process that includes data collection, validation, draft development, internal review, edits, and then finally we get to the design piece of this. This end-to-end process typically takes us about a span of 3 months to ensure accuracy, completeness, and quality. And then at a later date, we determine timing and coordination to be placed on council agenda for oral presentation, which we will anticipate doing in December. This was a concern by the Public Safety Commission, just based on the time frame it was taking us to get out an annual report. I know there may be an expectation that if you're talking about an annual report when the year ends in 2025, then the annual report is ready. But for us, that's not the case, because if cases are filed in December of 2025, in order for us to provide complete data in our report, we have to wait till all cases are complete. And because they have that 180 days to complete the case, it may be the following year in June or so before we get that complete data. So that is the delay individuals are seeing in terms of when we are getting those reports out. In addition to that, we are having to have a review and approval by the Communication and Engagement Department, as well as the City Manager's Office.
So question, so would it be fair to say that in a decent year, one should expect a 2025 report by, I guess, August or whatever of 2026? I'm trying to put the lagging months, like 9 months or something like that.
Yeah, there's a lag in months, and so let's say, for example, this year, the 2025, we're still waiting to close out cases from 2025. And so once all of those cases are closed out, probably around June, we are drafting that report. And so by the end of 2026, we'll be reporting out, we will release the 2025 report, and then we will report that at a public meeting.
So I guess we're thinking that, and I guess the effective lag is a year, is what we're saying here.
So we're not releasing the 2025 report until 2026.
So I'm assuming like the actual process of issuing the report is not that difficult, because everything is in the computer and I can work on that. It's just the taking the time to get it in.
To get we have to validate all this information, that all this data that we're looking at. I will tell you, the community engagement section of the report is a lot easier, as well as the policy sections of the report. It's the complaints data that takes so long, first of all, to complete all the investigations by June, and then to validate all that data. And then there's these review processes that we go through as well.
So what about doing quarterly reports instead, so that we're getting to see information throughout the year?
Well, the community is getting to see information throughout the year, because we do those quarterly working group meetings. And so at those quarterly meetings, then we are providing data at those meetings. Compliance, and so there was a question about posting requirements and posting gaps, and also data infrastructure. These were some of the questions coming out of that recommendation. All complaints submitted to APO are published on our website. Anonymous complaints are not separated out. And why I make that point is because the recommendation asks whether or not all the anonymous complaints were published. Well, we don't publish documents by complaint type. And so yes, all of them are published to include the anonymous complaints as well. And so that's why I point that we do not, anonymous complaints are not separated out from any other complaint. AP does not publish compliments. That was one of the questions as well, whether or not all the compliments were published. And also there was a question about publication of oral and written reprimands. So at the time that this recommendation was advanced, APO had already had been working on finalizing the remaining 2 quarters. So there were 2 quarters of the last of 2025 that had not been published, and the commission had some questions related to reasons why those complaints were not published. So we were working on posting the remaining 2 quarters of 2025 complaints at the time this recommendation was advanced. APO, again, as I noted, we do not separate complaints out by type. So yes, all the anonymous complaints to date have been published to our website. There was a backlog of complaints that had not been published to, just basically due to staffing vacancies and not having a meeting confer agreement in place, which kind of hindered our ability to publish certain documents, because those documents without a meeting confer were considered confidential documents under state law. So following the ratification of the new agreement in October 2024, we established the necessary process and redaction safeguards to resume publication in compliance with legal and privacy requirements. And since that time, APO has published all of the 2025 complaints on our website. January 2026 complaints have now also been published, and complaint documents continue to be posted or published in regular batches as the team completes final quality review and redactions. As of April of 2026, complaint documents now have to go under review to ensure that they meet the federal web accessibility standards. That's new as of April. So now we are required to, this was required by the Department of Justice. It was a ruling for local governments, and therefore we're having this caused maybe a 45-day delay in us getting postings with that additional accessibility requirement. The chain of command and those numbers of compliments received by officers at its quarterly working group meeting. And so then we also on our website as well. Regarding oral and written reprimands, there was a question about whether or not those are published on our website. We are not currently publishing them on our website. Our current document collection, if you go to our website, you will see some written and oral reprimands there. They will date back to 2019, I think 2021. As I came on as the director, I made to focus AP's public posting practices on some of those most serious disciplinary outcomes. I think that's where accountability is greatest for the community. Some of those lower level, we talked a lot about lower level disciplines such as oral written reprimands, typically involve less serious policy violations, and where the intent is really to improve performance rather than impose significant punitive action. We had a lot of conversation about what those lower level violations look like. Kevin noted discourteous movement, report writing, but some of those things which would not qualify for mediation, but I just want to make you aware of some of those things at a level of confrontation with other fellow officers. Those are some of the lower level or written reprimands you will see. Using profanity. We see a lot of patrol vehicle operations, speeding, and minor accidents with vehicles. A lot of those are those oral and written reprimands. Sometimes it's activate your body worn cam in a timely manner. Those are some of the lower level things that we are seeing. And so just an example of what some of those lower level policy violations look like. Talked a lot about that, so I just wanted to give you some examples of that. So those lower level disciplines, such as that receive some of that board would recommend. We are not posting on, our website. I this which maintains transparency regarding overall disciplinary trends, while keeping the public facing repository, which is our website, focused on the serious misconduct matters. These are the matters that I think are of greater public interest, and it's the things that the public is going to go to our website and look for. And so that was the reason for that decision. The also Police Oversight Act, it requires public transparency and outcomes and discipline reporting, but it affords us some discretion on how to organize that information and present it. So our current practice satisfies that mandate through detailed publication of our serious cases, and then we aggregate the reporting of some of those lower level of corrective actions in our annual report. As it relates to reporting gaps in data infrastructure, we continue to try to identify, we're working with ATV to identify a case management system that could support the reporting obligations under Resolution 99 and some of those consistent data gaps. Some of the questions have been related to racial data, demographics, that kind of stuff. One of the things that I've explained publicly before is that on our complaints form, some of the data is not required. Some of the demographic is what you do when you're filing a complaint. It's on the complaint form, but it's not a required field. And so with that, you're not getting complete data because some complainants fill it out and some complainants do not. We don't require because we don't want it to have a chilling effect on complainants' ability to file complaints. Sometimes if we're asking for demographic information, what's your race, national origin, unless you're filing a race-based complaint, of course they're noting their race, but if not, community members sometimes don't want to provide that demographic information, and we're okay with that. Don't want to have a chilling effect on their ability to file complaints. There was also a question related to
Steve, can I ask a question? I totally understand the reason that you cannot show data because it's not compulsory. You don't have to do it. It's optional. But what you could report is % of people who fill that out, and that would give the public some idea of what that field. Next thing to knowing racial outcome would be to know the % of people who, because it's voluntary. That's an option where you could partly comply with that.
There was some questions about the data gaps in terms of that. We had a plan in place to reclassify a position within our department in hopes of addressing some of the data gap issues. Of course, that position was eliminated after the sale of Prop Q, so we could not go back and recruit for someone for that. One of the discussions our leadership team is having is we currently have a data scientist in our office. While that person is not working on specifically complaint data, which was the concern from the commission, we are discussing if there are ways that we can allow for that position to help us in that area in terms of bridging some of the gaps of the that responsibility. We have to think about the capacity to do that in addition to the work that person is already doing. But it is a discussion we are having in terms of maybe having that data scientist that we already have such that address some of those data issues. And in addition to that, as I mentioned earlier, we are working with the Austin Police Department on a case management system that we think may support some of those data gaps as well. There was a question related from the Public Safety Commission related to training and case management. management. The complaint staff received ongoing training. There was a question related to the, complainant's options when they are filing for complaints, specifically around supervisor referrals. Of course, we get a great deal of, complainants selecting supervisor referrals as they are filing those complaints, questions related to that, and then complaint training. So we noted on the document, on the backup document, that you have several training sessions that the staff have already completed. As I mentioned in this meeting previously, that APO holds a membership with the National Association of Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement. With that organization, they offer virtual training, plus there is that national conference annually that we've invited you all to go to. And so our staff get training in that way as well. Regarding options for complaint filing, we provide complainants with clear information about their options for filing. This is a complaint-driven process, and so therefore complainants are empowered to determine how they want to move forward with their complaint. So we do have a vast number of complainants that select supervisor referral as opposed to a formal complaint or community concern. So there was some concerns about the number of complainants making that selection in terms of supervisor referrals. The complaint team has the expertise to know that if a complainant is identifying behavior that is serious or egregious, but they still think that may need to be a supervisor referral. My team has the expertise. They know that, no, that's not a supervisor referral. That's serious, that's egregious, and we have a process in place to request a formal investigation if we are seeing that. We review all supervisor referral outcomes, and we also monitor any trends in complaints, including any repeated incidents in any specific geographic area. There were also questions related to case review vacancies, case briefings, and recommendations from the Community Police Review Commission. As you are aware, you have already established working groups and are receiving cases, case files for review. There was a question about what you had the ability to review. So CPRC can review any alleged serious misconduct case as well as a request for review by a complainant. Case briefings, there was a question about case briefings. Where will they occur? They will happen in a closed session, as you are aware. We have filled all the vacancies. There was a question whether or not you had any vacancies on the CPRC. There are no vacancies. There was also a question about how those vacancies will be filled on alternates. And as you heard in the executive liaison report, we are prepared to reopen that application process to ensure that alternates are available so that you can fill those vacancies quickly. Again, there's no vacancies on the commission at this time. And then CPRC recommendations, there was a question related to where those recommendations will reside, and those recommendations will reside on the CPRC website. And then there was some miscellaneous questions about Office of Police Oversight participation in press conferences at those critical incidents. There were some questions related to funding, website accessibility, which I addressed already, and hiring. Now, APO is present at critical incident briefing. It's intentional, and it aligns with national best practices. Many civilian oversight agencies across the country, they prioritize early visibility during critical incidents. So our presence there signals to the community that independent oversight is actively being monitored, and the incident is in monitoring in real time of those incidents, and that we're not just reviewing it after the fact. So when you are seeing those press conferences at 4 a.m., 3 a.m. there, or Kevin will go there, we are on scene, we are in the process in real time. We're looking at body worn cam that night, and so that's the purpose for us being funding during the last, budget adoption, that was a question. With respect to unmet needs, I think one of the questions was, what did OPO need or think they needed? And so we know that there are some areas in terms of that being able to report out more data. So that is a unmet need. Again, we are actively evaluating solutions to address some of those remaining data gaps. I've highlighted some of the strategies we are currently working on a new with APD on the case management system that we think can provide more reporting, looking at staff that we already have available that can help with that as well. So outside of that unmet need, and those are the strategies we're working through to address that. There was a question regarding hiring. Like every other department across the city, we follow the municipal civil service rule for hiring staff. I think there was some expression related to the team having some individuals with a public safety background. I think Commissioner Flood mentioned that earlier. Again, we follow, the municipal civil service rule, and hiring is based on skill, knowledge, and abilities. And that's all I have.
I'd like to start. There were a number of questions that were specific to the CPRC, to some degree. I think I want to, I guess I would thank the public information because they seem to be behaving as APO and CPRC oversight. One of the questions I'm not sure we addressed today was they specifically were asking, is the CPRC given the ability to review cases that OPO or APD AI have already chosen not to refer for discipline? And I guess to me, I want to discuss again, there is an innate problem that's going to occur even as we start to get to do more cases and review cases, and that is that CPRC has to wait for APO and us in the police department to complete their reviews before we can even start looking at ours. And even though in theory that the police chief, should wait for us to look at that before she establishes a ruling, the practice is that in practice what's happening is if you have an officer who's been waiting for months to get a ruling, I can see the pressure on the police. They want to get that officer, let them get a ruling, good or bad. And so there's an innate pressure there to do that soon. And then one more obstacle that's happening that we are now, they have to wait for us also. And I anticipate that's going to be a problem. I have to show how to resolve it. One of the reasons I like to talk to what can be done, but this is going to be a problem. Because even though in theory it says, they get you were before that, the CPRC of their custody, seriously body injury, all their seriousness after the completion of any investigation and before the issuance of discipline and or the response to the request for review by a complainant. The problem is that in practice, it's proven difficult for us. And I'm sure that you may have a similar problem. How will you manage having plans to resolve that stuff? You have to have the same pressure. Finish your investigation, hope that she can, wait for you.
I will say we are similarly situated. We have the same issues. The big difference for us, though, is we're there 40 hours a week, so we don't need a majority vote in our decision. We recommend decision. So we are similarly situated as it relates to being behind the 8 ball in some way, just because we work 40 hours with full-time people. That's our advantage. The disadvantage you don't have. We got to get form, we got to have it's proper.
I think law says that you can work in theory, but I would have to make it a problem. I was saying is that the while the law says what can be done and how should be done, the 11 of us are in the committee have jobs and obligations, and some of these take a long time. I've been asking the commission to please record, get some data on how long it's taking you to do things, because I think that can help us sometimes, especially when we have potential commission weren't given that data. Okay, so when you see I ask you questions like how much money is it costing to do investigation, because I'm aware of how much data there is there. I'm trying to figure out how much time reasonable for somebody dedicated to this. And
Lot to it, want to be thorough, not leave us on our, right? All the ones what's needed. It can take a little bit of time, but.
Just throwing a random suggestion out there. You're talking about how we're having a difficulty, especially because we have so many cases behind us and we're following them and what they do. What if we started taking cases that happen now instead of the ones that have already passed? If we have all of these cases that need to be reviewed, why not take them on when they happen? Like, because we're a new commission, started out fresh. And why should we have to wait until your decision is made or the Austin Police Department's decision is made when our position is to overview the policy in the first place? So we're not recommending anything happen to the officer. We're just deciding what policies were used, what was followed, did they do it correctly or not? So why not start this commission off fresh, start doing as you said, when there's a use of force incident and you guys have to go to the scene or officer involved shooting, we can take that same thing here. When something happens, you're alerted, okay, it just popped up. Then there's 11 of us, this case just popped up, between 11 of us, we'll be able to get that 3. So why not just start over new and take on incoming cases?
just want to say that's my understanding. You're not questioning that we have to wait for APO to finish their investigation for them to even make it publicly available to us. That's clear, right? That's not even our choice. It's a mandate. We have to wait for APD to finish their investigation, APO to finish theirs before we even get to start to see the investigation. So that's a threshold that's statutory. Our issue then is that how fast can we, once that is out, the investigation is complete, how fast can we do the reviewing and have it done in time that we can reach the chief before she has to be. And APO has the same issue. They have their, APD is doing an investigation. They can start theirs, but they have to wait for that to complete. So some things that they need to see from the office of APD. So when they complete theirs, then they also have to say, okay, complete, write the thing, and I get it out in time for the police chief to take it into consideration next for me. So, yeah.
I guess my question is, why can't all 3 of those processes be going at the same time? Like, why can't we all be reviewing at the same time? If it's an issue in the code, then what's the rest of the issues? Why not all 3 of us be able to do it at the same time? And that way the community is getting the information back faster.
What I'm trying to explain to you is that there's investigation, which only experts like APD and APO can do. And there's review, or the reason why the commission says, one of the things is review, is that's all we do. We do not do investigations, we do reviews. And so reviews can only start after investigation. That's just the logistics of what's happening typically. And I think a lot of people are not really aware of the role of CPRC and that's by essence, by statutory, by law, that's what. So you can't review. That's right. You can do something. But we are trying to do that. The job, just one second. What the triagent is trying to do is trying to prioritize all the things that are there. And I think that's something to consider, that when we start prioritizing, I think they already put that into account, prioritizing things that are by date that are coming up pretty soon, and prioritizing things that by seriousness of the incident or etc. But that does not stop the problematic, the fundamental problem we have to wait. One example recently is that we put out some examples of cases we wanted to review and spread them as a commission to for work group to do. Turns out those investigations were still in the process. So if they're still in the process of being reviewed, we can't even start. That's
I would say that's partially correct. I was under the impression that once internal affairs does their investigation and they send it to AP, is that not correct?
We make requests that they download it into the drive.
Right.
That's correct.
Right.
I mean,
So
it's
we
not,
don't have
it's
to
not
wait on-
correct from the standpoint that, like I say, the last batch took 11 days and 13 days to download. But we request it the same day they come to us.
Right. Because we don't have all the same rights because of some different regulations, but yeah, it's supposed to be almost near simultaneous once it comes from internal affairs. So that's not really the reason for the overall delay. I think she brings up a good point that we can stop looking retrospectively, or we can do both, and we can start being more proactive and try to catch up with the wave, because we're never going to get through the backlog that we're already on. So we'll always be behind. So once everyone feels comfortable or confident that there's enough, I would like to actually go with the active cases as opposed to studying things that we can't make a difference on. I think OJT is always good. So I do like that recommendation.
we're waiting for comment. I already just try to explain. I think I can explain how we are supposed to expect for APO to finish their but once again, you are actually the commissioner, but you are on the working group that is thriving too.
Yeah, but we're not waiting on APO to finish their analysis. We're waiting on the case because it gets delayed, as Mr. Master said, because it gets scrubbed, but we're supposed to have simultaneous access to the case the same time that APO does. They get it sooner because they don't have the barriers that we do.
Right.
But not because of anything statutory or regulatory.
So I guess we don't agree on the fact that the CPRC needs to wait for APO to complete their ruling on the investigation before we can.
I never heard, this is the first I'm hearing of that, and we have the subject matter experts in the room, so I was the first to them.
So just for a sense of clarity, the CPRC does have to wait till an investigation is complete. And in terms of that comparison, as Kevin has noted, we are doing this work along with the police department, with internal affairs. So we are in interviews. You guys are not reading those interviews to a file that's uploaded. We are in interviews with witnesses. We have the ability to look at that data prior to the closing of an investigation. You all don't get it until an investigation is complete. So I think that's where the chair is noting that we have the ability to do this every day, all day, 40 hours a week. And so we have the ability to look at that information in real time, and you are only getting it after the completion of an investigation.
Understood, but what I was saying is that you all can't actually make your recommendation or complete your process until the internal affairs is over, but you're saying that you guys are there in real time while it's going, so you do have an advantage. I agree with all of that, and so what I'm saying for us is because we're already behind with the entire investigative process, and then when it does get released, so that you guys can make recommendations, and then you have to clean the data so that it can be released to us, which is more time. It would be more effective if we could start working on cases that we can actually do something about as opposed to being retrospective. But I just thank you for that clarification.
And forgive me, because again, I've only been on this commission here a couple months, so now I'm really starting to understand the process of everything. So now that I fully understand, you guys have to complete your investigation before we step into this position. I'm completely questioning the whole 3-group system, 100%, because if our position is solely to determine if policy was followed or not, I think that each individual person should be able to look over the case, and what they're looking for, only looking for, is was this policy not followed? And if we discover, oh wow, there is a policy violation in this specific case, then we bring it to the full commission and we say, hey, we have a case that we need to look into to go over the policy. So at this point, this 3-group system, I just feel is completely ineffective, because all we're looking for is failed policy, and you guys have already gone over the case twice. So it makes a lot more sense for us individually to go over these cases and try to find the one that has a policy. Then bring it to the committee.
Yeah, and this one to clarify a little bit, when we were reading the case, the judge, whether, for instance, the punishment that they think is appropriate is not, we get to say, no, I think this person should be, and have to escalate that. We also have a chance to ask, when we see there are things missing here. X, Y, Z person, it wasn't interviewed. Maybe if the interview that could have changed things, get a chance to have her briefing and add, which could initiate further investigation for the correct. So the way to think about both for me is that there's this is an opportunity for the citizens, somebody that has no tie to the police system, judge whether the verdict is a fair one. And based on understanding that a complete investigation was done and that all the possible things that the investigation are. So I think, that just we could make an impact on this and help somebody get justice.
And so I really like what you just said, and I agree with that, because that can be added onto that as well. But I do not believe, and again, I've never been a police officer, but we're going over all these cases, and we have yet to find one where there's something that is suspicious. So why not use that same ideology that you're having? Okay, something is weird, then we bring it to the commission, and we say, hey, we need to look into this further. We don't need 3 people to review a case that we're looking for something to be wrong, when 9 times out of 10, there's probably not going to be something wrong in it. So why not each individual review the case, and if there's something wrong, then it gets brought forward. But I don't think there'll be that many, that there's things wrong.
Well, that Commissioner Finley make a recommendation to change our system.
Yes, exactly, because right now, the way it's run right now is that Commissioner Flood, Franco, and others put a process together, and the idea was let's give this process a chance, and this, because right now, the most, I'm biased, but the most important contribution that we could make is reviewing cases, and we're just very trying to learn to review them and understand how difficult they are, and so the thought was, any case we review, just that we learn to review and make sure we get that expertise under the belt, know what a code 42.3 means and what's the right punishment and so forth, so we're still trying to understand. To make sure that when I see APO makes a decision, and I second guess them, that there's validity to it, and there's nothing that I missed out because their expertise and so forth. So the process process of what that we're doing right now is 100% in the hands of 11 of us to redefine. No problem. But for some of us, we believe it's still, and I know others say, we have not done enough. Really, we've done enough reviews to feel, but that's just my view. But you're absolutely right. But thank you so much. That's the process. Write a suggestion for changing the process, and then we can go in that.
I hope you write that suggestion because we've been doing this for a year and a half. It is inefficient, it's ineffective, it's not working, and we need change. I don't know what that looks like, but I will help you develop and figure that out. I don't want to be the single point of failure, so if my triage is slowing things down, I will stop doing that too. But I'm trying to make it as expeditious as possible because, like I said, we're already getting these cases way behind the curve. And if it's a high-profile case, we know they're going to close it out. Sometimes they close it out before ABO can even make a recommendation, and they were sitting right there along the way with them the whole time. So we need a better system, and I think that's what we heard today when people were giving their public comments.
But I expect a different Commissioner Floyd that we've not been reviewing for a year and a half.
Not saying that. I said we have been on the for a year and a half.
But how long have we been reviewing and so that's where.
Well, there's been a lot of delays to that, but that's not justification for continuing to delay the process. And you can't let the pursuit of the perfect be the enemy of the good.
How do you
And
think?
so there's a lot of us on this commission. It's not always a consistent, constant thing. So if people could do it individually and say, hey, I looked at this case, and that may be a better process. Like I said, I don't know what the answer is. I know that giving everything a chance until more commissioners leave and we keep having attrition is not it. But I did offer to, and she did identify the problem. I did offer to help her come up with a solution to the problem because I am not in agreement that this is the ideal system.
And that's in a public forum, I want to make sure for the record, right? I don't believe there are any one of us that has reviewed thoroughly reviewed for 4 or 5 cases in here. And there's some who have not reviewed a case. That is not a problem of the process. In fact, it's not going to accelerate things by picking one up and people learn. Like once again, the way some things you have to get done by trying them. And my opinion, because I am on a working group, I can tell you that I'm not sure if you all want, if you review the case, but because I am in a working group, I can tell you that we need to have more chances to review things. And I think that's, but by the way, remember this, you can always write a proposal. And then if there's 6 people who agree, you know, we're good. So, but a warning to you, if you haven't done a case, is that some of us who have believe that we still need to do a few more cases to feel comfortable that we are capable of giving Mr. Master and his team and saying, you know what, I think you missed this.
I have a question. Who worked on developing this process?
I worked on it. You know why? Because, like I said, due to the turnover. And
I asked the chairman a question.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that. You said I had a
I
question.
said, Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
I did not hear you say that.
Commissioner Flood and Mr. Franco were part of the process and they produced the
But then the rest of us didn't know that.
May I concur? I just want to say, I think we're having, this has been a difficult process, I think, for all of us. I think we're having a really good discussion, to be honest, because at the end of the day, you know, we make recommendations, and how do we get there? I think the main point is, you know, we get to see things that the general public may not be able to see. And we take that and we make recommendations with it. And, you know, I think that, I don't want to lose sight of that. Being able to take this very important role we're all in. It's very difficult, but I think it's, you know, I'm glad we're doing it.
I'm glad we're doing it too, and this is a volunteer position, but if we're not gonna do it deliberately, then we shouldn't do it at all. And I'm the first one to say, try anything, but I can also say that didn't work, I failed, or I was wrong, and we need to revisit that. That's what continuous improvement is all about. It's not just saying, oh, I came up with this idea, we're gonna do it, even if it doesn't work. No, it doesn't take all day to recognize sunshine. This is not working. maybe we do need some more reps. But two things can be true at the same time. We can also be more proactive and review real cases too. And if people don't feel that they're prepared to do that, then they don't have to participate. You know, we can barely get a quorum sometimes. So it really just needs to be more judicious and less trying to perfect the process, because we're never going to get it right. But we can always get better, and that's what I'm focused on. But right now, I feel like we're not being efficient or effective, and I feel like it's really a waste of all of our time.
I disagree, at least in terms of, I'm in group B with the commissioner, with Chris and Derek. I feel that, I can only speak of the experience of what we're having in group B. But I feel that, we've been making positive progress. I think at least the three of us as commissioners seem to work well together. I think, I had some stuff in my life this month that affected my ability to commit as much as I would like to. But personally, as commissioner, I would not like to split the groups up yet.
At least for B.
We're group B, at least group B. Because I know there's some things that I can proactively do that I did not do this month that I think we're almost there, as far as group B. I don't know, I'm sorry that the other experiences they're having in the groups, but I would say group B is so far going in a positive direction. And I think we can meet our goals.
We're not the first oversight commission in the country. Are there some other commissions across the country that maybe we could talk to them and see what their process is?
Yes.
Ms. McCall, you had mentioned that the APO is part of a national organization that police oversight. Could you put us in touch with some other commissions, civilian commissions that maybe we can talk to them?
Yes, we absolutely could talk to you and connect.
Okay. It doesn't have to be in Texas. I mean,
yeah. I've asked that question in the past as well.
Well, I would like to say that the current process, I believe that a lot of forethought was put into it. It was thought out, it was presented well. We all discussed it and deliberated on it, adopted it as a commission. And I think it would be premature to change it, but I'm open to consider it. But right now, we just want to run a circle. So I believe it was a thought out process.
My question to everyone is, when do we say that it's not? If we don't know where we're going, we can get there any type of way. So when is a good cutoff point? What is the trigger? What is the indicator? What is the measure of performance, measure of effectiveness? How do we know what that is? And that's my whole point. I'm okay, and I appreciate Kathy sharing about Group B. I like effective work. So if you guys are working well, then I brought up the suggestion that we should have a team that expedites cases, the ones that come before us in real time. I just don't like the current formula where we're just looking back, even though we can't make a difference, even if we present it to this body, because the case has already been closed and actioned upon. It is good training, but I don't think the people want training. That's not what they ask us for. We need the training to actually deliver results. But at the same time, we have real cases in the queue that we could get even better training on and understand the process even better. And so I don't like binary choices. And that's what I keep hearing is, okay, let's just keep doing the retrospective. But we can be prospective too. Like I said, it's not a binary choice.
Perfect. I'm trying to move on. So what I would suggest is the following. It's clear that we work, make a proposal, second, and move on. One of the things about a parliamentarian system is that sometimes you want to get a feel, a poll before you put something and work on something of having knowing if you have a chance of passing. I suggest just anecdotally look around and wonder, see people in group B and C and say, okay, people would actually do the work or thinking, maybe you want to keep trying. That's somewhat of an indication that maybe if you do put a proposal out there, which you should and you have the right to do it, you may not have a good chance of passing because the people that work, they're doing work right now, just trying to do some more. So I don't want to discuss anymore. I think it's we feel this, we all understand our position and we're gonna keep going in circles. So I propose to continue. If you don't have any questions, continue. Allow the director to complete her presentation and then
Chair, may I, this presentation, this briefing, especially as it relates to the Community Police Review Commission, that the Public Safety Commission made the recommendation has prompted a lot of conversation. I know we're talking about number 21, where they talked about your ability to review cases. If you are open to it, I know when we initially started that this discussion of the APO and IAD had proposed a solution to, I don't know if you all recall that, maybe I'll let Kevin speak to that, but if you're open to, as you are looking at Commissioner Pia's and was drafting something different, also maybe relooking at that proposal that was made maybe several months ago, if you're open to revisiting that proposal that was made several months ago by the Austin Police Oversight Office and Internal Affairs. We want to see you succeed, and so we're open to sharing that if you're open to reviewing that process again. Now, like Kevin talked about that.
Yes, when we first started moving in, we first started talking about the process. I think it was myself and Lieutenant Wilson, who's a lieutenant in the third grade. We had kind of proposed a process for and Ms. Johnson's point. You guys are the first CPRC prior that actually heard cases, that actually got briefings, made recommendations or not. But we proposed a process that looked like IAD would complete their case. They would do what they're doing now. They download the case into a folder that they would do a briefing shortly after they downloaded their case to the full commission. So I think the biggest disconnect is, it's not a disconnect, it's the word that's in my head right now, is that the proposal was for whenever a critical incident investigation was completed, they would immediately download it so that it's fully reviewed. What I would say is I think that logged up, you guys want to protect it, and that's a lot. I would advocate that we look at the process that the previous CPRC used, looking at critical incidents, in most cases, death in custodies, officer-involved shootings, serious cases of maybe excessive use of force, serious improper conduct cases. Let's get the investigations done. Both internal affairs and IAD, both internal affairs and the commission kind of falls in line. But I'll be happy to, we'll make sure we send the full commission because we had it in the flow chart and spelled out. We'll get that to you then to consider.
That'd be great.
We have that on how we do it. That's really good.
However, it's totally up to you how you want to.
I would like to, recommend, that we take up and consider item 8 out of order. Then let Mr. Plant with his public comment, which I made earlier.
It's, I mean, that's the truth. So, like I said, we will, sorry, agree. What we'll do is skip 7 for now. Let's go to item number 8. So, goes discussion on recommendation of the city council, city manager, and Austin police regarding transparency, stability, and public presentation of data relating to interactions with federal immigration.
Thank you very much for the consideration. My name is Peter Hunt. I'm a volunteer with the Austin Justice Coalition. Thank you, Commissioner Eugene, for the consideration. Review the same way, but it's not go back. I wanted to speak in favor of a recommendation to council regarding the regular publication disclosure of information regarding APD's involvement with federal immigration officials. In particular, I want to emphasize 3 things that I think would be good for this commission to recommend to council that this reporting be monthly, that it be in a dashboard format similar to the other information on the APD open data release, and that it cover all interactions with federal immigration officials. This sounds, I think, a lot more comprehensive than it actually is relative to the data that is currently collected and distributed. For reference, currently there is a regularly monthly updated data release that covers all requests for immigration status. And also, per a directive from Council in 2024, there are quarterly reports that cover what looks to be all interactions that APD has with ICE. The most recent of these was released January 31st, covering the period from October to December. I'd say it looks to cover everything. Technically, the 2 sections I'm referring to, sections 2 and 3, cover cases in which APD resources were dedicated to assisting immigration officials and cases in which it provided information for requests of immigration officials. That sounds to be fairly comprehensive, but I think it would be valuable for this commission to recommend the council clarify that directive to cover all, to just say it should be all interactions, whether those are requested by immigration officials or were, for example, initiated at the decision of an individual officer. And importantly, that this information be distributed in a way that's consistent with, for example, some of the other reports that releases data sets and then have monthly updates. As I said, the immigration status requests reports are sent out monthly. Those are easily accessible and much easier to look through and find and deal with. The issue with that sort of updating pattern is currently the immigration coordination information that is released in these reports, these quarterly reports, can have as much as a 4-month lag time between event and when it is reported. This is particularly relevant right now when we've had conversations before addressing, for example, something that happened in January. And there have recently been updates to general orders, particularly General Order 319, that modifies the standards for how officers, or clarifies the standards for officers engaged with federal immigration officials. With the current reporting pattern, that means that we would not really be seeing those effects, let's say. So January, February, March, that report would come out at the end of April. But these were instituted in the middle of the reporting pattern. We wouldn't really be able to see potential effects of the change in general orders for any long-term patterns until April, May, June, end of July. So that's getting into deep summer before we see sort of the implications of changes that may have been made early in the spring. So I think it's pretty valuable for this commission also to recommend that the reports happen in a consistent, frequent way as funding holders are, which is the 4th of every month, like the immigration status. So just to reiterate, I'm happy to answer questions about this material afterwards. I would encourage this commission to make an affirmative recommendation to council to release reports on all interactions that APD has with federal immigration officials, whether initiated by federal immigration officials or APD, and report on those monthly in a way that is accessible. Again, happy to answer any questions. There's plenty to say here to my extent.
Yeah, I just want to say that I think it's really useful to have the public in a responsible way have the information. Obviously, the responsible way can be interpreted in many ways, but there's a lot of obviously, there's a lot of politics involved with ICE and good information about what is actually going on is valuable. So we know what are they protecting people for, and it's good information to have.
I just have a clarifying question. Are we actually discussing item 8 or are we just discussing what we talked about? Introduction or?
Yeah, since, we're gonna be discussing item 8 this morning, and so started since we had a public comment allowed. Now we're focusing on item 8. And, we hope that person. We are discussing, item 8, and since Mr. Hunt, wanted to make a public comment on it, we allowed him to talk first, but right now, the rest of us will be discussing it, and we'll ask, the champion person who put together the lead the discussion.
Okay, myself and Commissioner Franco put together this proposal. You all should have it before you. And we basically adopted a lot of this from the Public Safety Commission. We have more authority, than they do, but we, merged a lot of their information and they gave us a lot of feedback, when we had a conversation with them. And one issue that I wanted to bring to your attention that I had not even thought about was we may not be getting the full picture because the state DPS has an arrangement with ICE. So an Austin PD officer on scene working with DPS, APD may not report, but that doesn't mean that the state police who is also at that incident does not report. And so we need to catch that too, because and they pointed out that that could be a trend and a pattern, is that, yes, APD is not reporting anyone to ICE, but there could be state police involvement and those individuals are still getting reported to ICE. So we need to be more, I guess, widen our aperture and be able to contextualize that. Because if an APD officer calls a state police officer on the scene so that they can contact ICE, they're just circumventing the system. And the numbers still won't reflect what truly happened. But similar to what Mr. Hunt was asking for, the whole outcome of what we discussed was an open and transparent dashboard, coordinated structure, and a unified reporting network. And we are asking for transparency, and then updates on what is going on with the implementation. I'm standing by to take any questions, and I will offer Ms. Franco the floor if she has anything to add.
I think if nobody has any, excuse me, any immediate questions, I do want to make a comment about, part of this, we did not include a within a specific time, right? So instead of, and hopefully we have enough time to kind of go through it, but something that we're missing is that within a specific time of days to have those interactions shared with us. So I think there was a bit of a gap that the comments brought up. Sorry if I lose my voice, that's why I'm kind of quiet today. But yes, I will try to defer most questions to Commissioner Flood, but if we're able to answer anything, I'd be happy to.
I guess my biggest concern is last meeting that we had, I had said I am nervous about this type of system because it can possibly be weaponized against the police and it can deter police from doing their job. That was before I fully understood what SB4 was. Now, if you look into SB4, which has been upheld by the Fifth Circuit Court, it specifically states a local entity may not prohibit or discourage the enforcement of immigration laws. With that being said, if one officer feels chilled in any way by performing their duties over
them being targeted, if this is broken down per sector, which I highly recommend against, if one officer is deterred from doing what they are supposed to be doing, then the city of Austin will be in violation of SB 4. We already know that Ken Paxton is looking into the city of Austin and is threatening to take away state funds over this. So I am very, very stern on the fact that we should not have it broken down the way you guys have it in your proposal by sector, because you are gonna deter police, and that could and might and very likely will lead to Austin getting its funding removed from the state. Additionally, I wanted to say, as somebody who's worked in state and federal policy before, looking at the proposal is also another concern that I have, because we're just, we're a commission, and when we are going to be making proposals and things like that, in order for these policies and things to get passed over the next level, typically you want to be as generic and as short as possible on what you're trying to achieve, because it is not our duty to create the systems on this commission. That's going to be the duty of the city manager. And so what I would like to see for sure, and to protect the city, is that you guys go back, and by the way, you did an amazing job. So I do want to thank you for the time that you put into this, but I would like for you guys to go and see the actual document that the community or the Public Safety Commission did. It's going to be about 2 pages long of a whereas and a therefore. Go back and put it in that format, and then take away the requirement of reporting by precincts. That way we can ensure that the city of Austin is not liable for violating SB 4. And regardless of how anybody feels emotionally on this topic, because it is a sensitive topic, our feelings are irrelevant. The only thing that is relevant is that SB 4 is state law and we must comply with it. So.
Thank you. And there are a lot of state laws, one of which is to protect our citizens. And I think that's what this goes towards. If an officer has the right by state law to report, this does not dissuade them. They are not prosecuted. Nothing happens to them. It is just trapped. If someone has an incident, and if we can't take data and turn it into usable information and understand what the trends and patterns are, then we're letting the police dictate their own policies. Their job is to protect and serve. The servant can't feel superior to the people that they're serving.
So I hear what you're saying. I hear you.
Can I finish, please?
Yes.
Thank you. So we have to have some type of accountability, and they have to have some oversight. And all we're asking for is what the facts are. So if this precinct has a higher rate of incident, we need to know that. That's how targeting works. That's how you fit systems. If we treat everything equal as opposed to equitable, then we'll never get anywhere, because we'll look at everything as it's the same. It is not. Things happen at different times per day, different shifts, by different officers. And if we can't pick up on that and hold those people accountable, then we're failing the people. And so if you think that us making suggestions that literally is what they are, and everything's going to undergo a legal review, if you think that's hindering anything, I'm here to say that it's not. It is what we would like to see ideally. We took what you said, the public safety recommendations. We even had a meeting with them, and we added on to this because we have more important mechanisms than they do. And so this was collaborative. This was not done in a vacuum. This was not done without gathering facts. And so we want to ensure the people, the internal affairs and the police officers union have their back, their own role. This is our role, to be the voice of the citizen, and this is what this is written as. And so my job is not to protect or look out for the police. They have enough protection. My job is to look out for the people. My job is to look out for my son. My job is to look out for my neighbor, and that's what I'm trying to do. And I'm trying to do it in a transparent way, and not have anything hard to understand, hard to locate the documents, or any type of delays. I just want to bring a realistic perspective from a lived person's experience and show what the data is. If it's happening, we need to do something about it. If it's not happening, great, but we can't know if we don't track. That would be my response.
And I totally appreciate what you're saying completely, but I don't actually know where each of the commissioners live that are on this commission, since we're not broken down by district. But I can say the very type of community that you guys are trying to protect with this happens to be the very community that I live in. I live in a poor neighborhood in the brown and black communities. That's where I live right now. And so unless you guys have gone out and spoken to your constituents in your area that may match that targeted area that you're speaking of, I think this is something that I strongly, strongly recommend that it be a citywide view, because I have spoken to my constituents and I do live in this neighborhood in which we do not want things like this.
I think, well, I go there frequently, and the people that I talk to, maybe they don't talk to the people you talk to, but they do want to know if they're being targeted. They do want to know if they're being over-policed. They do want to know what the statistics look like on the other side of the tracks. Because how can you have a fair comparison if you never compare?
Are the people that you're speaking to, do they have an illegal status?
Are you ICE?
I'm just saying, like, if they don't have an illegal status, then this particular thing is irrelevant.
That's not true.
ICE is not going to go after someone that's not illegal.
That's not true. American citizens have been arrested by ICE. American citizens have been detained. They have been falsely deported. I don't know where your information sources are, but it is public information that, and ICE has admitted in court that they make these mistakes. So just because you're not illegal does not mean that you're going to be free from being accosted by ICE. 2 American citizens were killed by ICE. So I know that's not true. So I'm not here as an ICE protection agency. I am here to represent the people of this city and be a voice and say that we need transparency. I'm not saying ICE is good or bad. Every agency has good and bad actors. It's about how they operate and what we know about them. And Laura has her hand up, so I will digress.
Oh, sure, I just wanted to respond on the SB4, that SB4 is still under active federal court. It has not reached final or stable enforcement status. So because enforcement has been repeatedly enjoined or remains subject to ongoing litigation, it's going to be premature and it's potentially legal risky for any local policy, any commission decisions to assume it is fully operative or consistently enforceable. So I think instead of scaring into, oh, there's this law, there's this going on, I stand by the community, and that happens to be someone with a different background that is mentioned it. And I think this is exactly what we're going to have these conversations. I do to bring something like this up. If there's anybody has any questions or feedback.
Yeah, I was heard a personal perspective that people are not the legal or legal documents.
Yeah, so, well, my thought is, we're not changing, as far as I understand this recommendation, I could be wrong, it's not necessarily changing the general order. It's just collecting information and accessible to the public. That's my understanding. If you correct me if I'm wrong.
You're not wrong, so I'm not correcting.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm sure that day will come, but for today, it's just information. And as long as we run it by, I think, I don't know how you guys are gonna do it, but as long as we run it by, we're not collecting information, we should not be collecting and disseminating to the public. I'm pretty sure, as long as it follows the law on whatever that may be, we need to talk to all about it is, as far as what information we can collect and disseminate to the public, and especially segregated information, or by that I mean like collected information, and it's not identifying a specific officer. As long as we're careful here, I think
just information is a good thing.
Yes. This data is already collected. I'm just asking it to be put into a dashboard because the average American has about an 8th grade reading level. But if they can just see, oh, well, this number of people were arrested on these dates in this sector, that's not hard to do, and people have short attention span. So I just want to give it to people in a way that they receive information. Some people love reading long novels. Other people just give me the facts, and that's all this is an attempt to do.
As a low income mother living in poverty, I'm just simply asking that you guys don't highlight my neighborhood and have it on blast. Why can we not just do a citywide data instead of targeting specific areas? I don't want my neighborhood targeted.
Your neighborhood.
Can I intervene here? I guess it's very clear. You guys have made a position, and one of the things that we're going to do is we'll just rely the rest of us to make a decision. One of the reasons why I want to make sure Commissioner Harris knows, one of the reasons this did not make the items voted to vote on was because we never had a chance to get it to check by equal. That's a threshold we try to do that. So that's one of the things that will happen in the next month. Okay? I encourage every one of you to have now. You guys spend more time in next month before, because it would have been, you will know by then if there are any things that people disapprove on, and it's going to be up hopefully for voting on next time, and you'll find out. And Commissioner Peña made her point very clear. What she wants, the other 10 of us will have to decide if we feel that it's more crucial for the data to be out there, and So I don't want to continue deliberating because the vote is clear. One of them says citywide, the other one says, I want to know the details because it's important. And just for the record, I think the proposal was also started prompted by the members of some amendments. If you guys are interested, make sure, and let's try to have these things come to the commissioner before the week before, because it will help the process if we can have this in time for the legal to have time to review. Once again, the threshold here is not going to be, whatever you change, it's going to have to go through legal again. So please make sure it's in our hands at least more than a week before. Make sure at least meet that threshold next May.
I just want to ask.
I believe legal was here and last week, and they didn't really have much input. But because these are recommendations for the city council to pass, these are not actual things that we're going to act on or we don't make laws or anything. This is recommendations for the city council. I'm not sure that it can get a legal review, but I'm not sure it's necessary because these are recommendations for the city council, and they're going to have their own legal review anyway. So I don't know if we're just trying to be to ensure that we give them the most accurate document, or we being redundant. But either way, this is a recommendation to council. It's nothing for our committee to actually enact. We can't enforce law or comply.
You can blame the chair that decides the caution is to have any recommendation we put out go to council first.
Yes, we want to know the reactions or the actions that are going on. We want to know the things that are happening in our city in regards to this issue. I don't want us to lose the funding, but how does it affect you? How would it affect your area where you live? What is wrong with doing a citywide view versus a district broken down view? And I would really like to hear other commissioners explain how that would affect them negatively by doing a precinct-based reporting instead of doing citywide. What is the negative impact?
And while commissioners think about that, I want to reiterate that nowhere in this recommendation is there any instruction to identify neighborhoods of concern or precincts or any of what you are concerned about. So I want to make that clear. Nowhere in this draft are we asking for that specific data. even though I think it's already collected, and we're even asking to present it. So I want to make sure that all the commissioners understand that that's the issue, Commissioner Pena, that you're having. It's not something that's actually embedded in the draft. And I think like for Chair was mentioning, we just had a little more time to read through it. It was kind of submitted a little bit late on my end, and we're not unable to get people to review it before we're able to learn it. But I think this is something that you can need. You are absolutely welcome to bring those recommendations, bring in those amendments, and we can have another conversation with those proposals. You don't necessarily have everybody agree one thing or the other. You can add in those amendments. And I think right now, hopefully, we just had some time to think about their answers. If anybody else would like to chime in.
Chair, speak to the and
Thank you. When I spoke earlier, and I want to give some information that's already publicly available regarding these kind of incidents, which includes zip codes and case numbers for each of the incidents where it happens, which I think is more specific than the city. This was put out, like I said, at the end of January. There's provided a case number, the reason for the stop and arrest, the reason for contacting us, which in this case, an officer was working at a City of Austin park cleanup project, confirmed that someone there had an ICE detainer on them, contacted ICE, the person was taken into custody, and then it lists the general location of the incident, zip code. So a lot of this information is already being publicly distributed by the city on a regular basis in a way that is more refined than city level reporting. We've been doing this for at least 3 or 4 years since this directive was first put out. So I just wanted to flag that as this has been a point of some contention. I just want to clarify the information that is currently available and highlight that part of what I think this recommendation is good for is making sure that this information is put out in a comprehensive, consistently updated way in line with other kinds of data that the city also collects and also reports, as opposed to in a way that's less consistent. So I feel like that's a very important thing that all of you have been discussing. I wanted to clarify that information that is currently publicly presented by the city as been presented.
And may I ask you a question? What is your opinion that it's necessary to be broken down that way if we do this dashboard, if it's already available to the public? And I also want to remind everyone that these programs and to design this system is again costing the taxpayers more money. We're spending more and more money for data that's already available. On top of that, our city is already in a deficit of millions of dollars. So why is it that we're going to need to go and add in new programs?
So the dashboard that or the kind of presentation that would be appropriate for this is already used for a wide variety of other forms of police reporting, including other kinds of information that is in the same report. The report that I'm referencing here has as its first section cases in which APD requests immigration status of an individual, and that is put up in a monthly updated report that you can access through the open data set. So this does not involve like producing any new fancy interface or anything like that. It doesn't even involve making something for a specific kind of report. Half of the information in this report is already put in the current kind of monthly updated format that I think would be appropriate for the other half of this information that encompasses the activities of APD related to federal immigration agencies. So as far as cost burden, I obviously can't, I can only speculate that, but that seems about as minimal as you can ask of just saying, hey, this information is already being collected, is already being reported. It should just be updated or reported in the way and with frequency that other information we have is being reported, and that we already have systems to do. Does that sort of answer your question?
For clarity, when I say dashboard, I'm not talking about like an actual dashboard, like a digital, like, or your car dashboard. I'm literally saying categorize and display numbers in a way that people just read the numbers and see what the data is through quantitative and qualitative data in one view. That's it. So just taking what we already have, dropping it into an Excel format, done.
So you're not talking about an interactive map that people can go and.
No, I'm not talking about just mapping or any of that. No, not at all. I mean, they can take that information, drop it into Claude, and they'll do it for them at once. sin or something, but no. I just want people to have relevant data that they can reference very quickly and be able to tell the story, because that's when we turn data into information and then we can act on that information.
Okay, we're running out of time, and I'm running out of time, so I want to make sure that a couple of things we have to do before we end. So I want to ask you this. Number one is item 7. I'm going to push that to the next meeting. Discussion on item 7 will be pushed, which is discussion of recommendation regarding the creation of publicly accessible security communication platforms, enhance transparency, and ensure compliance with Texas Open Act meeting. And it will have the benefit of, and then it will also have a legal review, so that will do that. And so with that, I'd like to make one comment for future agendas. Was maybe aware that we have to, every year, there's a re-election of officers. So there will be a re-election of chair and vice chair. And that is suggested to be done next May in the May meeting. So start being prepared to think about who you want to be your chair and vice chair. And then any other action items that we need there? Yeah.
I wanted to bring up, because I've been speaking to some constituents in the area, that our 311 or the iReportAustin.com, if you're calling 911 and for whatever reason the 911 call taker doesn't want to send out a police, they direct you to go to iReport.com. And that website is actually very difficult to navigate. So I'm having constituents in the community that are trying to report things that are having a very difficult time navigating that website. So I would like for there to be something on the agenda, or however we need to go about the process of making that website easier, because again, there are several constituents in my district that are having issues reporting things to 911.
Yes, I'd like next meeting's agenda to have the report about the APO internal affairs reporting.
Are you talking about from the previous CPRC group?
If that's what they got.
Other items for future agenda?
Yeah, I still need to have vice chair reached out to me and told me, sure, I did not respond in time about my discussion item about changing the burdens of proof for when an officer encounters deadly force resistance from preponderance of the evidence to beyond reasonable doubt. This time I'll respond to your email before.
I have a quick question for the APO. I believe the police chief was supposed to come this week, this briefing, but it got pushed. Do we know when she's been rescheduled?
Thank you for that question. She has been rescheduled for the May 15th commission.
Okay, thank you. And who's the lead point of contact handling those questions, Chairman? Thank you. I'll send any questions I have to you.
You can send all your questions. Well, if that is it, I would like to ask close the meeting, and I need somebody to motion. Second. Okay, 6:03. April 17th. Our meeting is complete. Thank you very much.
You're live at Austin City Council, Austin City Hall, where the Citizens Review, Police Review Commission is just met and giving their, the nonsense. Bunch of nonsense. Now you know why we don't have police accountability in Austin. If you're ever curious about why we don't have police accountability in Austin, you just saw why.
Was it, don't.
The dashboard to be released and publicized, because I think people deserve their rights to just navigate the city with a little more sense of awareness of what's going on. And I think we know that as, you know, if you're a long time Boston, you already know that there's a lot of new people.
Here's another Nazi right here. Douchebags.
To be honest, I don't think Department of Law Enforcement itself. And if you're governed the property and you're directed to do your jobs as you're supposed to, then you wouldn't need other law enforcement entities to, you know, conspire with or collaborate with. So I think it's just I think the collaboration being forced is something that is creating a polarizing environment for society, and I wouldn't want APD to do it, but again, if we have to abide by state regulations to avoid any type of funding cuts, I completely see the discourse, right? But, you know, I know just recently we went to the town hall in East Austin where Lisa Davis was saying that we have to trust our APD officers to utilize their best judgment to not call ICE when they're dealing with certain administrative ICE warrants. And I think we can't trust that type of insight from Lisa Davis if you have a typical officer that lives in Livingston County, which is a completely red county, coming in to police our area, and then they just decide to, you know, contact ICE because they felt however they felt.
You gotta sign up. Okay.